about 5 times, I think the gentleman said, reported to him that they saw one of the Sasquatch coming out of that mine shaft.
I came out one night and didn't turn the light on until I got all the way out of the house. When I shined the light, there was that thing that was exactly the Shunkaworkin.
You could see the limbs moving like something in the top of those trees. We could see what we thought at the time was monkey hands and monkey feet. And you'd see it stick out of those bushes every once in a while.
As I walked towards this thing, all of a sudden, it gave off a roar. Whatever this thing was taller than I was. I am 6'4".
And I asked her, I said, could these be mountain lions? She goes, they don't make mountain lions this big. And mountain lions don't walk on 2 feet. She said, last night, she said, it sounded like Freddy Krueger, you know how he has those knives. She said, it sounded like it drug down the side of our house.
Well, hello everyone. My name's Elijah Henderson.
And I am Gabrielle Henderson.
Thank you for tuning in to the Cryptid Studies Institute YouTube channel. We got a very interesting show for you tonight. We have a gentleman who contacted us, and we appreciate him contacting us and allowing us to hear his story. And Gab, you've been in direct contact with him. Tell us a little bit about him and introduce him for us.
Well, yes, tonight our guest will be Mr. Roy from the great state of Montana. He has had 4 Sasquatch encounters over a period of around 40 years, and his encounters are both fascinating and terrifying, and we really look forward to sharing his stories with you tonight. So without further ado, everybody meet Roy.
Roy, how you doing, brother?
I am fine, thank you. And thank you for getting back with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for contacting us, man. We sure appreciate it.
You bet.
And man, I guess to really start things off, what would you describe the first thing that got you involved in this field or got you interested, or what really kicked things off for you?
Well, I've grown up in Montana all my life. Since I was born in Wyoming, we moved here when I was 4. And what kind of started it off was my uncle's sighting. I was 8, and this was in the 70s, and you guys aren't old enough, but some of your older folks listening will know that back then, Montana was a hotbed for a couple summers. They had like a lot of cattle mutilations, UFO sightings. I think that was the time that the UFO flew over Malmstrom Air Force Base and disabled the nuclear missiles, and there was a big to-do over that. It was just a lot going on. And he was taking his buddy home, and we lived on Upper River Road, and he was riding his bike, and one of these, a Bigfoot stepped right out in front of him, faced him, and he just panicked. You know, he's 4 years older than me, so I'm guessing he was like 12. I was probably 8 then. And he just kept going for it, and right before he got to it, a car came around the corner, and as soon as it saw the car lights, it bolted in the bushes. My grandma called the sheriff. They hauled him down to the police station. You know, they went to the site and saw where the bushes were broken and all that. And back then, they had like a whole crew of people, and they did like ESP tests on him, and he ended up in a book and everything. So all this stuff was kind of and I've hunted since I was 12. So, you know, I've been in the woods a lot. Not as much as some people, but more than most. And, and then my first encounter for myself was when I was 9 or 10. So that would have been 74, 75, somewhere in there. We lived at a trailer park, and we lived at the very end, surrounded by fields. And I remember laying in bed, something walked up to my window, and I could hear it breathing. And the crazy part was, it was as loud going in as it was going out, you know, just, and it was only massive. And I just laid there so scared, and I heard it starting to walk away. You know, the sound started moving. So I looked out the bedroom window, and we had a 6-foot fence, and that surrounded the whole park. And this thing just hopped it and was walking away in the field, just strolling away. And it was pretty dark, so I didn't get a good look at it, but you could make out the shape for sure. So I went and got my stepdad, all panicked. Of course, he came back; it was gone by then, and yeah, that's how it all started for me. And
that was
next
the basic
time,
kickoff point for you.
That was what?
That's the basic kickoff point for you.
Yes, sir.
That's really
like
interesting,
I said,
man.
I was kind of raised with this. Like my grandma would talk about my uncle's experience, and he was kind of the golden child. So they never poo-pooed it or made fun of him or anything like that. They were like, no, this happened. And, when the sheriff showed up and all that. So, yeah, I was just kind of raised with it to believe that it was real.
Absolutely. That's kind of how, in a way, it was with my dad, because he was passed down certain stories growing up as well, and it was just kind of always a part of his raising.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, brother, what
let's see.
would be the next one? Your next
the next
incident
one,
with the Sasquatch?
Yeah, the next one was broad daylight. We had moved up kind of by the airport, kind of by Gore Hill, on the outskirts of town. We had a house out there, and this was this is like 4:00 in the afternoon. It was broad daylight. We look out in a field, and there was this one was tall but skinny, and he was going through a log pile. It was crazy. It was my sister, my cousin, and me, and I had like a telescope, that I had gotten. I was probably 13 then, and I'd gotten a telescope, so we set it up, and we watched this thing for probably 15 minutes as it went through the log pile. So I got a really good look, and like I said, it was tall, thin, covered with black hair, but the face was the crazy thing. It had a face like a monster, right? Mm-hmm. I told your sister that Them and Us, if you Google that, that's the closest thing that I can put to it. That Them and Us, about the Neanderthals, except the eyes weren't like cat eyes. They had like the round pupils, as far as I remember. And it was just like it was in a bad mood. And we went down there the next day, and we saw these, I'm guessing like 3-inch logs, but they were twisted. And some of them had hair on it, but you could just tell where they were twisted.
That would take a very strong creature to be able to do that.
That's what we thought. I mean, I can't even twist a little 1/2-inch branch hardly now. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I couldn't do something like that.
But
yeah, these things were good 3 inches, and they were just twisted in one direction. It was the craziest thing.
I can't imagine the force it would take to actually perform that.
If it can do that to a log, it can do it to a bone. That's not something you'd want to anger.
No, the strength is unbelievable. Then the next one was, I was 17. Yeah, me and my best friend and my girlfriend, my high school girlfriend, who's my wife now. So we were out on Holter Lake, and you drive all the way to the very end, right? And we were out there for just messing around, And but during the day, we could hear branches breaking. It was, you'd just be doing your thing, getting ready to go fishing or whatever, and you'd hear branches breaking. And then I heard thud, thud, thud. I mean, the ground would shake. I knew it was on 2 feet. And you could feel the ground shake, like Jurassic Park where the water moves. Thud, thud, splash, and boom, and it was gone. And I thought, man, that is weird. And I know we have, bears and a lot of them and stuff like that, but that was heavy. So we go to sleep that night, about 11 o'clock at night. The fire's just really low. And we don't have a tent. All we have are blankets and stuff like that. And 100% true, I'm telling you. I heard a branch snap behind my head. So I tipped my head straight back. And not more than 12 to 18 inches at the very most, there was this 8-foot wide, huge, muscular Sasquatch just standing there looking at me.
That must
I mean,
have
I
been
have my head.
terrifying.
Oh, it kept me out of the woods for 20 years. I kid you not. And like I was telling you, I would like to tell you, that I did a ninja roll and came up in my fighting stance, but I started screaming and throwing the blankets around, and I don't know if I spooked it or whatever, and it ran off, and I said, I'm not sleeping here tonight. So we got everybody loaded up in the car, drove down the road about 5 miles, came back the next morning. Now, where we had camped, all around it, we call it elk grass. It's about waist high. You can walk around in it all day and never leave a mark. But you could see the footprints where this thing ran off. It was so heavy.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And for years, I was convinced it was there for nefarious reasons. I have no idea. And how did something that big get that close? I didn't feel anything. I didn't smell anything. If that branch wouldn't have cracked, I wouldn't have even known it was there.
Can you describe a bit what it looked like?
Yeah, it was just kind of the low glow of the fire. I'm guessing very muscled. This one was very muscled. Right around 8 feet tall. And, kind of had the conical head thing. And, I could, because of the shadow of the fire, I didn't really get a good look at the face. And, but you could just see the girth on this thing. And no exaggeration, it was probably 12 to 18 inches from my head.
Oh, wow,
and,
man.
And I could tell it was covered in hair. You could kind of see the coat all over it. But it happened pretty fast. I wasn't.
Was there enough light out
extra long looks
to put off like an eye shine? Were you able to see an eye shine cover?
No, I did not see an eye shine. The fire was going. I mean, it had burned down pretty good, and that's why I could see the whole outline of it. And I just remember the muscles and how big and wide and beefy it was. But I did not see an eye shine, and I couldn't make out any details of the face. And
now, can you recall if you were doing anything specific that may have been drawing it out? Now, I know a lot of the times, just hanging out around a campfire or shooting the breeze, it'll draw them in. But were you doing anything like cooking around the fire or?
We were. Yep, we were cooking steaks and hot dogs throughout the day. And like I said, throughout the day, at one time, man, we could hear branches breaking, right? And then this thing took off running, I'm guessing, because all I could feel and hear was thud, 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 splash, and then it was gone. And then that night, that happened. And so I'm guessing us just being loud, playing music, cooking, and whatever, drew it in, and it was just hanging out there waiting for night, waiting for its opportunity to come in. And, I mean, I can't substantiate this, but I thought, man, if it was there and it grabbed, like, my wife, Linda, or whatever, and took off, imagine explaining that to the authorities. You would have been accused of all sorts of horrible things, and I don't know why it just walked that close and was just looking when I caught it there. So I don't know what it was doing there, but that kept me out of the woods. I mean, when I finally went back, I would set up my tent and surround myself with guns and lay there wide awake till 3 a.m, shaking, listening to every sound, and finally got myself acclimated to going back out in the woods. And the last time was about 4 years ago in September. There's a place about 10, 11 miles from my house as the crow flies. And I was camping up there. I brought the dogs, and I had a little camper by then. And the first night, my son came up, and we talked and whatever. And about 11 o'clock at night, I hear this, sounds like a 3-year-old up on the mountain crying, a toddler crying. It was the creepiest thing you've ever heard in your life.
That sounds absolutely terrifying, and from what I understand, you were in a location where realistically a toddler absolutely should not have been. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. I was way up on the Continental Divide, way back, back in the mountains. There was nobody camping near me. There's no way a toddler should have been, no way. And especially, it sounded like a 3-year-old crying, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, and I thought to myself, right, there's one or two things going on here. There's either a real toddler up there or something's trying to lure me up the mountain.
And realistically, had it been a toddler, how would the toddler's voice carry that far? It just doesn't add up.
No, it doesn't. And it was so creepy. It was so creepy, too. So I got in my truck, loaded up, and went home.
I don't blame you, man.
Yeah, I got scared. And next night, it's like, okay, we're going to try this again, right? This goes on for like 4 nights because I keep trying to make myself go back and I'm going to stay, right? Mm-hmm. Face my fears. Yeah. So the next night, I have the dogs with me, a lab and a little dog. And the little dog that never leaves my side just keeps going down the road. I have to keep going and getting it. And so I get in the trailer, and Calamity, that's the lab, he's going nuts. Man, he's running on the bed, he's whining. The only other time I've seen him act like that is when we had an earthquake. About 30 seconds before the earthquake hit, he did that. And he's running on the bed, he's whining, and I was like, okay, that's it. I'm not going to get any sleep here, we might as well go home. So I start loading up the truck, and there's a little stand of trees about 20 feet away, and I hear what sounds like 1,000-pound owl going, hoo, 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 like 30 times. It's not that really soft, hoo, with the flutter at the end.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, dude. No, I know what that is. So we get in the truck and leave. I come back the next night, or the next afternoon, because I always come back during the day. Same thing, 11 o'clock at night. This was one of the weirdest things. Same mountain, right? About 11 o'clock at night, I start hearing, to my left, I hear these chimp noises. It sounds like you're at the zoo. And then these whistles, and then from the far right, I hear this huge booming voice. And it was in this weird language but the volume, that's the thing I want to stress, is the volume. It was like, oh, and it was like this huge, and I just stood there for a second, and all this is going on. I'm up there by myself, so once again, I get in the truck and I leave. So, and the next day, I brought my son up there and his girlfriend and their 2 kids. And this is about 5 in the afternoon, broad daylight. And we're talking, and he grabs a stick off the ground and just wallops this tree. And I'm sitting there, Candace is sitting in a chair next to me over to my right. I look up on the hill, and I'm guessing it was 9 feet. The shoulders had to be 5 feet wide, no exaggeration.
Oh,
that's
wow,
a
man.
massive animal.
Steps out in front of me, and he's only like 70 yards. So you go to a gun range, that's not very far, you know. And he steps out in front of me, and he's got this weird smile on his face. And I was like, am I really seeing what I'm seeing? It was a chocolate brown. You could see the muscles under the hair. And each pec was probably 2 feet wide. The delts and the biceps were way bigger than my legs. And he had this little tiny head, right? Imagine a grown man's head on something that's 9 feet tall, 5 foot shoulders. It was the oddest looking thing. And we just stared at each other. And I looked down at his chest, and it's like, okay, that's not a bush. That's, you know, your mind is just going a million miles an hour, and it's like, that thing has nipples. That weirded me out. I don't know why, but it's like, he has nipples, and each pec is 2 feet wide. And then I look back up at his face, and we just stare at each other for a while. And I look at him, and then I turn to Candace real quick. Within a second, I turn back, and it bolts up the hill at this ungodly speed. And you know, like, the words big, huge, humongous, massive, they don't do it justice when you see these things out in the wild. I mean, and of course, they're just so massive, and when you see them that close, and we turned to each other and said, "Did you see that?" And yeah. So once again, we loaded up and left.
The way you describe them, it sounds like they would have quite a lung capacity for their voices to carry so far and to make such loud noises.
They have to, like that voice and that weird language. The volume is incredible. This thing had a face kind of like a gorilla, except for the mouth wasn't as protruded. It didn't quite come out that far. Black eyes, and the skin was like leather, looked like a soft leather, like black with kind of gray swirls in it. It's kind of hard to describe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we just stared at each other, and then it took off up the hill. But the lung capacity, like when the thing was standing in the trees imitating an owl, the volume is insane. That exact same place, I went up there with my buddy from Great Falls and his friends, and we were riding four-wheelers up there. And there's a place up there called Windshield Hill, really steep. Well, I climbed it, and they decided to go around. And while I was sitting at the top of that hill there, this scream comes out of the valley. Like I said, the volume, it sounds like a woman being murdered. And all these range cattle are up there. They just start going nuts. I didn't see anything, but you could just hear the volume. And that was the same place that my son and his buddy were riding their snowmobiles, and they rode back in there, turned around, and when they were coming back out, something had dragged a huge tree over the trail and set it in front of them. That wasn't there when they went in.
That sounds like something trying to trap somebody.
There was an account from up here in Greenbrier, Tennessee, and it was very similar to that. It was a hunter. He was out in the woods doing his thing hunting, and by the time he was getting ready to leave, something had pushed a tree in the middle of the road, and I think he had to call a buddy with a chainsaw to come get him out. And this was a very violent Sasquatch over the entire portion of his encounter.
Wow, that is terrifying. Yeah, my son, he told me, he's like, Dad, I never thought you were lying, but, until he started, till he had that happen to him. And, it just drug a huge tree, set it, and luckily they were on snowmobiles, so they could go around. But yeah, that made sense to me, like it was trying to trap him.
That's really spooky, man.
Yeah, these things up there. And then what was crazy is, like, okay, we know something's going on up there, right? So we start making trips up there at night, and I'm guessing 95 to 98% of the time something happens.
Oh, wow.
Like I went up there with the son, my same son that was riding the snowmobile, and we're sitting in his truck, and not a lot's going on, and we're further down the hill than from where I had my encounter up with the one that stepped out. We're closer to Marysville,
Mhm.
And then there's a ski resort up there. But all of a sudden we hear these. I let out a scream, right? And my son's like, "Don't do that! Don't do that! Nothing good ever happens when haven't you heard the stories?" So anyway, we started hearing these something, man, and these dogs at this house, kind of off in the distance, were going nuts, and these things came through the woods. I didn't see them that time. He said he saw two standing up at the top of the hill, but I didn't see them. So we make several trips up there. Weird things start happening. And then, but this is like 10, 11 miles from my house. Weird things started happening at my house. And I think I told your sister this. In one night, we lost 15 chickens out of a coop, a closed-in coop. And all that was there was a handful of feathers that were stacked. A handful of feathers that were stacked in a pile.
Oh my goodness.
And that's all that was left of them. Yeah.
And the fact that it was left in a pile, too.
That's definitely not behavior of a fox or a raccoon.
Right? Or a skunk. Exactly. It's like, okay, something weird's going on. And then, we have dogs. And one night, not one of them would get off the porch. We let them out for final about 8 or 9. And it was dark. And not one of them. They would go to the end of the porch and they would growl and bark a little bit and then tuck their tails and run back towards the door. And not one of them would get off the porch. And just all this stuff started happening around here. And then my son came up one night and bust, in the bedroom. "Oh, I need a gun. There's somebody standing outside." We have downstairs, we have a pool table in a room, and he had an air mattress and he was sleeping there. And he's like, "Somebody's standing at the door, wiggling the doorknob." And my wife's like, "Oh, you just dreamed that." And I was like, "I don't know if he did or not." And I asked him to describe it. He's like, "I don't know. It was all black, about 6 foot tall. It was wiggling the doorknob." And I was like, "Are you so sure it was a guy standing down there?" "Well, no, it was all black." And yeah, I don't know. So just all this weird stuff started happening. And when I quit going up there, the stuff stopped. So how weird is that?
That is very strange.
It is. It's almost like something was following you, and I don't know, is it sending a warning to get you to stop? It definitely raises some interesting questions about their intentions and motives.
Yeah, I think these things are pretty foul intentioned. I just laugh when I hear people say, "Oh, they're the friendly forest giants." And, that's one thing that really scares me. And scares or terrifies is a very selective word. But I think of all these people that go for hikes up there, or, and, oh, they're not real. And they've just probably walked right by them. And, we've had weird things. Like a few years ago, there was a biologist that worked for the state, went up in the North Hills, and just vanished. It was right by a place that a guy had a Sasquatch encounter. Down by the river. It was where we've got lakes like Holter Lake, and then it goes into the Missouri River. And he was down fishing, and he started walking down the bank of the river and across the. This is his story, but he sees this. He said it was a female for sure. Came running out on the other side of the river and started jumping up and down and screaming at him and waving his arms, and every time he'd start walking, it would just go nuts. So so it finally jumped in the river. He takes off the other way, and when he looks back, it had crossed the river, and there was a little one hiding in the bushes that he was walking towards. But anyway, this same area. So they bring out all the search dogs. Dogs refuse to do anything. You know, they hit a trail, and they just stop. And they never did find the guy. They never did find him.
I hate to say it, but it sounds like something spirited him away.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it was just right, like out at Lolo Pass here too. There was 2 people killed out there, and what I found so interesting was one of the men that was found dead was dismembered. His arms were pulled off.
Oh my goodness!
And I think one, if not 2, of his legs were pulled off. And in the news, it said, but without any use of tools.
Without
they were
any
just
use
pulled
of tools.
off.
That sounds frightening.
Yeah, horrifying. And then they found, same area, they found an old guy, I mean, thrown off a cliff. Not just at the bottom of it. I forget how many yards. It was an insane amount of yards. And the best the Forest Service come up with is, well, he must have been rock climbing and fell. I mean, and according to his family, it would have been like me rock climbing. That's just never going to happen, you know. And, my sister told me a crazy story about a year ago. She has friends. She lives in Anchorage. And I think this just happened last year. Her friend and her massage therapist was from a little town called Hope. And there was a guy, a real tiny town. Everybody knows everybody. And a guy had his horses outside of town. And about 3 hours after he goes to feed his horses, the dog comes back. Well, he doesn't come back, so she calls the neighbors. They go out looking for him. They find him. They find his torso. At least one, if not both arms are ripped off. The head is ripped off. They do not find any bite marks or claw marks on the body. All they found were a brown hair that was pretty long. I think it was like 6 or 8 inches long, and a black hair. And the best the Fish and Game could come up with is, well, a grizzly, you know, a brown bear and a black bear were fighting over the body. But there's no bite marks. There's no claw marks.
That's what the official story was?
That was the official story.
Oh
I
my
kid you
goodness,
not.
Roy. So
and
whatever's...
his arms and head were ripped off.
So it's easy to assume that whatever's in this area has a propensity toward violence.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I think so. Yeah. I think not all, but I think some of the missing people, man, I think they just get eaten. I really do. I mean, if you would have seen the way that one was smiling at me, I mean, it was a genuine, like, evil smile.
Ugh.
And it was so creepy, and just those black eyes just staring at me.
Now, curiously,
and he stepped out and...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. No, I was just going to say, and he stepped out in front of me. I'm guessing he did it on purpose. You know?
Like it wanted you to see it.
Yeah, exactly. And before that, with the nights, because all of that happened like 4 or 5 nights right in a row, and with the toddler crying, and then that voice, and then the fake owl, and all that, I had a pretty good idea. But when it stepped out, I knew it, man. I was like, man. And then right up the road, Windshield Hills, where I heard that scream. And then a couple of years ago, I was at the gun range out here. It's right at the Continental Divide, right up by McDonald Pass, right in the middle of the woods. And I was up there by myself, about a quarter of a mile away. I hear this scream, and I'll send it to you. There's one I was telling you guys about. It's exactly what I heard.
Thank you. We'd appreciate that a lot. And
Yeah,
would it be
yeah.
alright if we were to use that audio while I'm in this video?
Sure. Yeah. You can have. Yeah. You'll have to go to about 52 seconds. But yeah, absolutely. It's pretty clear too. And that's exactly what I heard. So, yeah.
Now, brother, curiously, I wanted to ask you on the one that you seen. I think it was the one that smiled at you, and you mentioned its smaller head.
Yeah, it had a tiny head. That's true.
Did it have a neck, or did it kind of blend into the shoulders like a lot of sightings seem to describe?
No, I did not see a neck at all. And I've got one of those SIG thermal optics, and my son I don't know why he was using the black. He should have been using the white or something, but thermal doesn't lie. And he got a picture, and you can see the black thermal show up, and you can see these massive shoulders and this little tiny head. I'll try to dig that out. And if I'm not much of a computer guy, but he might know how to send it to you guys. Yeah, and I did not know. I didn't see a neck, and he was just kind of side-eyeing me. I kind of saw his profile with his body turned a little bit. I could see the one side of his face, and I could see his full chest, like his whole body or upper body part was turned towards me. And I had him go up there the next day. And he's almost 6 foot with his cowboy boots, so I know this thing was 9 feet.
Oh, wow,
9
man.
feet, 5 foot shoulders, no exaggeration. And I'm well over 1,000 pounds. I mean, a big elk will weigh, 700? When I just laugh when people go, oh, I had to weigh 300-400 pounds. Well, man, an elk will, or a big grizzly can weigh 1,400 pounds. So I'm guessing this thing was at least 1,200 pounds or so, Oh, yeah, and I have 4 boys, and Samuel was up hunting by Lincoln, and he took a picture of this footprint and this really hard kind of shale, and this thing was sunk down like 1.5 inches, and he's like, he's 6'4", with his backpack on. When he was up there bow hunting, he says, I probably weighed 220, 225. I couldn't even make a mark in there. So he takes me up there, and there's this big sign. I kid you not, I've never seen it my whole life in Montana, right? And it was either BLM or Forest Service. I can't remember, but it says, BLM, enter at your own risk. And I was like, what? I've never seen that. So we go up there, and man, there was all these weird tree structures and blinds built by the game trail. Go back up there a few weeks later, it's closed for road construction. Now, this is one of the best dirt roads in Montana. I could drive the Cadillac up there. And a week later, they close, I forget how many, 12 square miles. No foot traffic, no horses, no four-wheelers, nobody's allowed to hike. They just shut the whole area down.
Isn't that interesting?
That's very suspicious of them.
Right? That's what I thought. It's like, And that was the same area, too. After a snow, the farmers and the ranchers will, drag their dead cows or calves or whatever, and they call it a death pile. And he took pictures, and I think I can get him to send them to me, and I'll send them to you. There's footprints now he's 6'4", leaving this death pile and the snow, and they're way down in the snow. Like I said, he's a big guy, and he's not even coming close. And it's going uphill, and he's having to jump from one track to the other one because the stride is so big. And he's like, Dad, when you're going uphill, your stride is a lot shorter. And you can see the claws on the end of this thing, and in the middle where the foot has like a bend in it, you can see that on these tracks. And yeah, I'll have him. I'll have him send that to me, and I'll send it to you guys.
I'd love to see
It's
that.
crazy.
Thank you.
And the weird thing was, though, he says, I didn't see any footprints going to the pile, just away.
Just away.
Yeah, I can't explain it.
Wow.
Right?
Man, you got something incredible going on up there.
Yeah, I'm telling you, you guys ever get up this way, I can take you up there, and there's probably a 90, especially if we stay for a couple days, 95% chance that something's going to happen. We're going to hear screams, or you can see footprints, something. I know they're up there August, September for sure. I think they live there all year round, but I don't know. Because we went up later on in the year, and, that's where the dogs were going crazy with and my son said he saw 2 of them, and that was late because there was snow on the ground then. But, so I don't know if they're up there all year, but I know they're up there in the late fall. And so I'm telling you, something will happen.
Now, do things tend to happen in the past few months, recent years, in that general area?
To be honest with you, I've only been up there once when I went with my oldest boy and my grandkids, and we went up there to pick huckleberries. I hate to tell you, but okay, I'm afraid to go up there camping by myself. I'll just be honest. So
I don't blame
you at all. They sound quite violent there, so I don't blame you at all.
And with the other more ghastly incidents that you relayed to us, I don't blame you at all, brother.
Yeah, well, thank you, because I just, it's like I should, but I'm just too afraid to go up there. And that time, that string, that all that happened like over 4 or 5 days, it was almost exactly at 11 o'clock at night every single time.
11 o'clock.
Except for the daylight sighting. And here's kind of a funny part. My son's girlfriend, she was like, oh, well, we should stay here tonight because obviously they're friendly. And I was like, yeah, till they come at 3 a.m. and your kids need therapy for the rest of their life. And what was funny was my third, which was Boo. He's Roy Jr. He was 22 back then. He had a sighting of, they were up in it's going to Butte. It's a park up there. I can ask my wife what the name of it is. Anyway, he was up there with a friend, and he looked down the road, and he's like, does that look like an ape standing in the middle of the road to you? And it's like, yeah, it does. And he told her about it, and she made fun of him. Oh, you saw a bear. I've seen bear in the wild. I've hunted since I was 12, and my son's been out quite a bit, and I just hate it. It's just a personal thing to me when somebody says they saw one of these things, and, oh, you saw a bear. I know what a bear looks like. So anyway, he's like, no, I didn't see a bear. But what was funny was when she saw him run up the hill, he's like, don't tell anybody. She went to work the very next day, of course, and said, guess what I saw? And everybody did the exact same thing to her. Oh, you saw a bear. And made fun of her. I don't know. Just a sideline.
That's the easy thing to tell everybody. Oh, you just seen a bear.
People just aren't willing to accept it. But, I mean, if you've seen a bear before and you've seen these creatures before, I would imagine you know the difference between them.
Yeah, these things have shoulders and arms. And they have a monkey. The ones that I've seen, except for that one when I was like 13, that had a monster face, man. That was like them. It was horrible. And it was kind of thin, too. But this one had like I said, like a silverback gorilla face almost, except the mouth wasn't quite as protruded. It was wider. And, you can tell the difference. And the chest muscles on this thing. And I'm really telling you, no exaggeration, those shoulders were 5 feet wide.
Did they all have kind of similar colors to them, or were they all different, the ones you've seen?
No. Of course, the first one I saw, I think it was dark. I mean, it was pretty dark, and I could just kind of see it walking off in the moonlight. But no, this one, the last one I saw was a chocolate brown for sure.
Chocolate brown.
Chocolate brown, just kind of a Hershey's melted chocolate brown.
Nice.
And maybe just a little bit lighter than that. But the hair was pretty sparse. The hair was probably like, maybe 4 inches long, but it was pretty sparse. I mean, you could see the chest underneath it, and hence I could see the nipples and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the monster-looking one was coal black. I mean, black. The hair was probably 2 inches long and a lot thicker. Almost looked like bear hair. But it was tall and it was thin, and it was just throwing those logs like it had a bad day. It was looking for something, and it was angry. And yeah, we went down there and man, saw those log twists. They were just twisted. It was crazy with hair on them and stuff. Yeah.
Now something I wanted to ask you, brother. Have you ever heard the Sierra sounds recorded by Ron Moorhead?
I have.
Did the kind of language chatter kind of sound similar to what you heard? Because I know the Sierra sounds almost sounds like a strange language.
Well, it wasn't near that fast. It wasn't like, it wasn't. It was a definite language. The volume was insane, and it was a lot slower. It was, I mean, it was deep and like that. It wasn't that real fast like that.
It almost sounds kind of structured the same way as the Sierra, but like you said, slower.
Right. No, it was a definite structured language for sure.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So those are my stories, man. I know I'm going to have to give an account to the Lord, so I've told it gospel truth.
Well, we sure appreciate you telling it to us, brother, and we feel the same way. We've always operated off of
an angel writes everything down.
Yeah, but we've always been raised with that belief system that an angel writes down everything you say.
We truly appreciate you sharing those stories with us. They're so interesting.
Yeah, man, that's fascinating. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Yeah, it's like I say, you guys ever get out this way, man, I'll take you up there. And like my oldest son, he's been wanting me to take him up there. He's like, oh, I want to see one. And half of me says, I should take him up there and we should stay a few nights just to see if anything happens. But the other half is like, be careful what you wish for, man. People, that one encounter I had where the one was standing over me, I mean, it gave me nightmares for years. I stayed out of the woods for about 20 years. And I'm not kidding you. I would, when I first started going back, I'd have a tent and my little dog and be surrounded by guns and just shake till about 3 a.m, listening for every sound, and people who haven't seen one or had these don't know how traumatizing they can be.
People tell me that a lot. I'm always going on saying, man, I'd love so much to see a Bigfoot. I'd love to see a dog, man. And people tell me that have seen them, if you see it, you're going to wish you'd never seen it before. It's going to change you.
Yeah. And just the fear that's associated with these things. Man, I've been a part, this years ago, I've been a part of some exorcisms and stuff, and there's a difference between like Halloween spooky, right? Like boo-ha, or watching a little bit scary movie or something. I don't do that, but it's just different. And when you really get into the demonic, there's a horrible, gut-wrenching dread that goes with it. And it's the same thing associated with these things. I used to think they were just apes, man. I am 100% convinced they're not. They're smart. They're if you would have seen how fast this thing ran up a steep mountain, I mean, it was almost unbelievable how fast it moved. Just unbelievable. Just bam, and it was up in the tree line.
Wow, man.
You know, yeah.
And I imagine it was a fairly steep incline too.
It was, yeah. It was. There's a logging road right up at the top there. An old logging road, but yeah, on the other side, man, yeah, it's steep, and this thing just bolted up it effortlessly, and so fast. It went from it was standing on. Let's see, the road was behind it, so when it stepped out by those trees, and I looked at Candace and looked back, and it was running, and just I kid you not, like 1,000, just that quick. That's all I turned my head, and it was already across the road, running up the mountain.
Oh, wow.
Just unbelievable speed.
Just an almost impossible speed.
Right, exactly. Almost impossible. So, yeah.
That is
Bears
amazing,
can run
brother.
fast, but they can't run that fast.
I don't suppose you've ever heard... I don't know if you look a lot into this subject or not, but have you ever heard of anything in your general area about any possible dogman sightings?
I know, not in my area, no. I heard of a weird, I think it was down by Missoula or somewhere, we have square miles of forest, thousands, we only have 1 million people in the state. This guy was on a road, and I don't know what he was doing. It was wintertime for sure. I've never heard of any, but he swears that he ran into one and it bit his arm.
Wow.
A black one. Yeah. And I don't know how he got away, or I just heard part of the story. But my friend, here's an interesting thing. He's seen one up by Snowshoe Creek, and he had 2 friends that had a cabin up there, and they called him right one day. The next day that this happened, they were up in their cabin, and 2 of them came in by the kitchen window, and one looked in at them. They didn't have a gun, so they ran and barricaded themselves in the bedroom and waited for daylight. They called him. He went up there, and he followed the tracks in the snow for miles, went into a cave, and then that morning they must have left, but they sold their cabin after that. Same guy, when he was a kid, so this would have been 1973-ish, because he's about my age. At J.C. Penney's here, they used to have like a electric race car track that you could go in, and he said a guy came to the gun counter there while he's racing the cars, wide-eyed, and starts saying, "I need the largest caliber rifle you can have." And the guys, they're talking and looking at guns. He says, "I'm telling you, me and my buddies were trapped in a cabin for 2 days. These big, hairy ape-like things wouldn't let us leave. Every time we had opened the door, they'd throw rocks at us. And so he wanted the biggest gun he could, and he was going to go back up there. But, yeah, he said they surrounded the cabin for like 2 days, at least 2 days, and wouldn't let them leave. So, yeah.
That is absolutely terrifying, but that's amazing.
Yeah. So, and a lot of people, when you talk to them, like, "Oh, have you ever seen any," once you get to know them, anything weird, they'll, especially if you share your story, they'll tell you, like these 2 guys that were up there, went down Dog Creek. But he's like, "You ever had anything weird?" And he said they just stared at each other. And this is where I had my encounter, where the one stepped out in front of me. And he says, "No, I'm not going to mock you. I'm telling you, I believe you." And they started sharing with him all the weird stuff that happened up there to him. They said, "Well, we've never actually seen anything, but, we've had a lot of weird things happen up here, so just crazy things." And so they're definitely same area, same friend, him and his buddies Him and another friend were up there. His buddy was down at the creek getting a drink. He was standing up by the truck. 2 black bears came barreling down the mountain in the meadow, and his friend just froze. I mean, they're running full bore. He's standing there, wide-eyed. They run right beside him, up the hill, by the truck, and keep running. 2 big, full-grown black bear. What can scare black bear like that?
Nothing normal.
It would definitely be an apex predator.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they didn't see anything, but Jeff says, man, those bears, they split him. They one to his right and one to his left, and full bore right past him, past the truck and up the hill. Didn't even slow down.
Shoot, it'd be startling enough to just see 2 bears running at you.
Right? Yeah, I'm sure he thought his goose was cooked. You know, looks up and 2 bears because bears can run fast, but they just ran right by him. So Jeff's like, man, I'm telling you, something scared those bears bad, where they didn't even stop. And I thought, yeah, I'm wondering, you know.
And I'm sure you got a pretty good idea of what it was that scared him.
Yes, sir. Same area, man. Same area. Yeah.
That is incredible.
That's true. Yeah.
Well, Roy, brother, I guess we're reaching about the 1 hour point.
Well.
With that being said, is there anything that you'd like to close out with? Anything you'd like to promote, or any final thoughts?
No, that's pretty much everything I have to tell you. So, no, I don't have anything to promote or any YouTube channel or anything. No, nothing. Those are just my stories. I've been living in Montana for 50-some years.
Well, those are some of the most interesting stories we've heard in a long time.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the edge of my seat listening, man. Those were incredible.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for my brother to hear your stories, because I thought it was pretty impressive when you told me when we talked on the phone a few weeks ago.
I really appreciate you sharing them with us, brother.
Okay.
Well, with that being said, Gab, do you have any final remarks you want to make?
Well, I just want to thank Mr. Roy once again for sharing his wonderful stories with us, and I want to thank everyone out there listening. Thank you. Please like and subscribe and keep tuning in.
All right, y'all, and thank y'all for listening and tuning in. Y'all have a great night.
Seacrest out.